This podcast is proudly brought to you by TreasuryONE, South Africa's leading treasury solutions company that unlocks financial value for your business. The South African rand continued to strengthen on Monday, breaking through the 14 to the US dollar mark. TreasuryONE currency strategist Cilliers explains what's behind the move and what might be next for the currency in relation to the dollar, pound sterling, euro and China's yuan.
What's happening with the rand? It's an interesting one. We've seen the rand jumping below the 14 levels early this morning. And that's all got to do with, once again, as we said last week, it's a commodity story. It's a story of the trade surplus. But we've had numbers out from the government saying that the tax collections looks better and the deficit as a percentage of GDP is much lower as they anticipated in the beginning. So that helps. Secondly, as I said, the commodity story, commodity pricing, gold trading above 1840 as we speak. Platinum has increased, copper has increased, iron ore has increased. And on top of that, we had the United States coming out with a non-farm payroll figure on Friday, which missed the targets way off. They expected in the region of 1 million jobs to be created, and it was only 200 and something, So that simply says to us interest rates is going to remain low for a little bit longer than anticipated, because the market wants to see a change in interest rates, and that's not what they're going to see. And I think the Fed really spelled it out for them. We will not raise interest rates unless we see inflation. So this week we've got the inflation figure. Let's see how far that's off target or on target.
And depending on which way it swings, what do you expect to happen to the rand?
Well, I think that the inflation figures is going to come out maybe slightly below target, indicating that there's still no inflation that needs to be concerned about. And that's going to underline the fact that no real interest rate increases can be expected out of the United States for quite some time. And that will put the dollar on the back foot further from what it is currently. And we might even see the euro going above the 122 into the mid 122s, further bolstering the strength of the rand against the dollar.
So do you see the rand going below the 14 mark for a consistent period?
It's been below 14 this morning, and I think we will most probably see it going below 14 again this week. And I would not be surprised to see it moving into the direction of the 1380 levels. And I think then we will change our range trading that we have and move into a new range of 1380 to 1440. As long as the story remains of a buoyant commodity prices, low interest rates in America, and vaccines doing better throughout the world, and the economy starting to grow, we will see the dollar on the back foot and we will see emerging markets do better. And the only thing that will change that is if we see significant demand coming from South Africa, and that would be only happening if we see manufacturing industry and so forth coming in and buying dollars, because they're actually expanding, building new stuff and building up the inventory levels. And inventory levels will only be built up if we see people spending, and the need for higher inventory levels is there because people are actually buying the goods and not just food and the little bit of clothing that they do at the moment.
Do you think that the rand could get even stronger later on this year?
Well, we said last week that the rand is still in an undervalued area, and that still remains. And as long as we now actually do better on a fiscal side and tax collection looks better and there's less pressure on the fiscal side to go and borrow more money and they keep their spending under control, then that part of the story actually also starts positive. So yes, very much likely that the rand will remain in fairly strong territory for quite some time.
What do you see happening with the rand versus the British pound?
If we see the dollar weakening and the pound increases, I think there's a very good chance that the pound could actually increase a little bit more in value than what the dollar actually weakens against the basket of currencies. So the pound could do better. And that's simply because I think the economy will start looking better. And I think the whole Brexit affair and situation is starting to look and playing out not too badly. And if the pound then gains more value, then we could see that the strong pound against the dollar could hold back on the rand actually gaining quite substantially on that as it would against the dollar. So we could see the cross rate of the pound actually weakening slightly. Not a lot, but slightly weakening bias to that side because of the pound actually doing better.
The euro, how do you see that playing out this week?
The euro will continue. If the dollar weakens, then we'll see further strength of the euro. But I think euro country, with their low interest rates and also no indication that that's about to change, and their economy is still slow out of the blocks. On that side, I think we spoke about the pound. No, a pound could gain on the euro and the rand could most probably remain fairly consistent. We could see the euro trading between a 16.90 and a 17.30 level, but fairly stagnant movements of the rand against the euro. Euro, in other words, not gaining that much.
We spoke last week about the Chinese currency, and obviously China is a major trading partner. What do you see happening with the yuan?
When you look at that, there's the continuous discussions between America and China on trade talks, etc., placing the Chinese one in a bit of a tight spot because that can react fairly aggressively towards what happens between the talks. Overall, I think the yuan has also got a very good chance of actually strengthening against the dollar, simply because of the weakness of the dollar and people moving closer and emerging markets doing better, of which China is still one. So I think the yuan could also appreciate quite a bit against the dollar, which means that it would also appreciate a little bit against the rand because the strength of their economy is quite better than us. So there I would be looking towards a slight weakening of the rand to the Chinese yuan.
Thank you for your insights, Andre. Do the cryptocurrencies have any sort of impact on real currencies?
Not really on the real currencies. I think that's got more of an impact on commodities than anything else. And more specifically, I think it's got more of an impact on gold. Gold is for a very, very long time been a safe haven currency, safe haven commodity. I mean, the industrial usage for gold is not as much as the other commodities. So it was really just an investment vehicle. And I think a lot of the money that always went into gold as an investment vehicle is actually finding a way into cryptocurrencies. And the importance of cryptocurrencies and the amount of money that flows through those is on the increase on a continuous basis. So I think a lot of the money, as I said, moves away from gold as an investment vehicle into cryptocurrencies. And it's interesting that if you look at the cryptocurrencies, when they start battling a little bit or losing value, then you do see gold picking up a little bit and vice versa. So I'm not going to say that it's a heck of a direct correlation, but I'm beginning to see that there is a bit of a correlation between those two. Somebody had asked me this morning, how far can the rand strengthen? And I said, that's not the question. The question is, how far can the dollar weaken and how long can commodities continue on their upward path? That's the story. It's not whether the rand is strengthening or weakening. It's how far the dollar is moving and how's commodities doing.
Do you have the answer to those two questions?
Well, if you ask me, then I think commodities has still got a little bit of run left in it, simply because as we do better with vaccination programs and as economy starts building and growing again, there's a physical demand for commodities. Now, one must remember that you don't wait for the actual growth to happen before you buy. Those people buy beforehand and they stockpile beforehand so that they have what they need for this build-up. And as you then go into the build-up and the growth is actually there, then you see a bit of a flattening of that demand because they stockpiles and then they actually just buy what they use. So I think there's a short while that we're still going to see the upward pressure on commodities, but comes the third quarter, towards the middle end of the third quarter, I think that will flatten out, and I think then we'll see most probably a slight decline in commodity prices because the demand will be lower.
You've been listening to TreasuryONE Director and Currency Strategist Andre Cilliers. I'm Jackie Cameron for Biz News. This podcast was proudly brought to you by TreasuryONE, South Africa's leading treasury solutions company that unlocks financial value for your business.